Hey, Luminary, Mercury Retrograde in Sagittarius is here, happening from November 25th through December 15th. This isn't just about delays or miscommunications. It's a cosmic invitation to reroute your journey and reconnect with your purpose. In this episode, I want to explore how Mercury's path through Sagittarius will help you illuminate where you might have strayed, inspire honest reflections, and help you reframe challenges as scenic routes towards your big dreams. Ready to realign and expand your belief in what's possible? Let's dive in. If you're a subscriber, thanks so much for joining me again. And if you're new here, welcome to Star Powered. I'm Leslie Tagorda, your host, a multiracial, multifaceted professional musician turned web designer turned astrologer. Astrology has helped me overcome an identity crisis by revealing my star powered strengths. Now I use these strengths to guide healers, entrepreneurs, and change makers like you in making your mark through astrology. Hey, friends. It is so lovely to be back. I apologize for such a delay in between episodes because, quite frankly, I've been having a really hard time emotionally and mentally. And so I had to take a little bit of a break and just come back to myself. Now, again, so many great things have been happening in my life and my business, and we've been moving and shaking, and it's really all been a little bit too much. So, in my community, Star Powered Circle, I was really looking forward to doing something differently that like for me, and which was leading by example, because normally when I am feeling overwhelmed, I tend to avoid, I tend to disassociate, I tend to run away, I tend to ostrich with my head in the sand. But this time I wanted to be open and honest with the people that mattered most to me, my community, you, and just share that sometimes we're not doing very well mentally or emotionally, and it's okay that we can take a pause, we can ask for help. And so last in the last few weeks, as I've been taking some time to take care of my mental and emotional wellness, I reached out to find a therapist to get some help for me. My community has been showering me with love and support, sharing hypnoses and meditations and other self-care practices. I'm here to fill my cup, to refill my cup. And I'm so excited that we have this Mercury retrograde and then Mars retrograde coming up too. I'll have another episode on that so that we can reroute our journey with this Mercury retrograde, and in Mars retrograde that they're going to have a 10-day intersection. That Mars retrograde through Leo and Cancer is going to help us reinvent ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to this medicine mode of both of these personal planets going into retrograde, because it is time to recalibrate. So, in today's episode, I want to talk about this Mercury retrograde. I'll have another episode again on the Mars retrograde, but I'm calling the theme of this Mercury retrograde Reroute Your Journey. Mercury is going to be spending its entire time in Sagittarius, sitting opposite Jupiter in Gemini, called that mutual reception. Both Mercury's in the house of Jupiter, Jupiter's in the house of Mercury. They did this awesome like house swap. Mercury is finding all of like the global things that like Jupiter has collected from all of its explorations, like, oh, look at that totem, oh, look at that artifact, oh, look at all these beautiful things, look at all those degrees on your wall. And then Jupiter in Mercury's house is like, wow, look at all of these books, just like exploring the bookshelf of Mercury. And so both of these energies, when they come together for this Mercury retrograde, it's going to be just an illumination of what you are here to do. So, in today's episode, I want to cover the themes that I see presenting itself in Mercury retrograde through Sagittarius. This time there's a bunch of aspects with different planets that I want to talk individually about. I want to offer you some journaling perspectives. Of course, I'll give you those key dates for you to follow along. And if you follow me on social media, I spend most of my time on Instagram, although I haven't been really visible possible. Haven't been showing up too much, but if you catch me there, make sure you follow me at B Star Powered. And if you're on my email list, you'll probably get an email from me that has more information about this Mercury retrograde. You can always find the Mercury retrograde and more information about me on my website at starpowered.com. I'll have all of the links in the show notes if you need them. So let's dive in. So Mercury retrograde begins on November 25th. It's been going through the shadow zone all the way back since November 7th, when Mercury entered Sagittarius of 6 degrees. That is a very special degree personally for me because that is where my moon is, right? On Sagittarius of 6 degrees. So, yay, feeling that kind of like emotional need to really, really take care of myself. And so, when Mercury is going through that shadow zone, we're really looking at the foreshadowing, right? From November 7th, when Mercury is going direct and crossing over that shadow zone, where that place where it's going to trace back, that first pass, we're looking back at what's breaking down, what's holding us back from really tapping into our journey, tapping into that direction. Because when we think about Sagittarius, Sagittarius is the big picture thinker in the sky, right? Sagittarius aims its arrow and it directs where it wants to go, where it wants to explore, where it wants to catch a different perspective. I always think about like all of these archetypes, and they say, oh, like Aries wants to get to the top of the mountain, Capricorn wants to get to the top of the mountain. You know what? All the signs want to get to the top of the mountain, but what motivates them, why they want to get to the top of the mountain, is different. For Sagittarius, they want to get to the top of the mountain because they want to see the view. They want to change a perspective. And so when we're thinking about Mercury in Sagittarius, about how do we change our mindset? How do we change our thinking? How do we change our thought processes so that we can realign and recalibrate back to our greater purpose, our big why, our big dreams? This is that Mercury retrograde that's going to help us. And so if you think back to when Mercury crossed that shadow zone at Sagittarius of 6 degrees back in earlier November, you probably have been seeing the foreshadows of like what you get to rethink once Mercury finally stations on the 25th to shift gears and then go on reverse. So, of course, on the 25th, you want to make sure you have lots of space, because even as you're rerouting your journey, if you've ever been using like a GPS and like there's no internet connection, you're like waiting and waiting and waiting for like the next route to come up, and you're like, shoot, am I supposed to go left or right? Well, on the 25th, you may not know. You may not know which direction you need to take. So instead of just making and choosing wrong, why don't you just be patient for a little bit and wait till the internet comes back up so you know where you want to go? Because this Mercury retrograde, you are going to have so many planetary support, grammar, to be able to help you really reroute your journey. Okay. If you have fallen off the path of walking your purpose, this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius wants you to reroute your journey so that you can reinvigorate your path. It happens, right? Sometimes our big dreams, our big why, our big purpose becomes out of reach because little things in our lives snowball into big things that knock us out of our path. Now, there's no judgment when this happens, right? The last episode that I recorded almost a month ago, I shared why I hadn't been on because moving into this new house really knocked me off my path. And it happens, okay? But to be a great leader, to feel successful, means rerouting your path and heading back in that right direction, or noticing when you're like, oh, I'm just a few degrees off. I don't want to go in that direction anymore. I need to recalibrate and change a few directions and to get my target more easily. Or maybe you're like, I don't even want to go there anymore. I want to go someplace completely different. So this is that Mercury retrograde, that thought medicine that you need to help you find your way. Right? Sagittarius is about the big picture, connecting the dots, living your purpose, expanding your belief in yourself, expanding your belief in what's possible. If you can begin to see that your current route isn't a wrong turn, but simply a scenic route where you're meant to gain new perspectives, then you can redirect your thoughts back to what's important to you. Okay. So, this particular Mercury retrograde is a pretty average Mercury retrograde. It's about 21 days long. It's going to explore 16 degrees of a wedge in your chart, again, from that six degree of Sagittarius all the way to that 22 degrees of Sagittarius. Just such a significant portion of my chart for me because it's right between my moon and my descendant. So, real like I'm feeling this totally deeply. I don't know about you, but I'm really feeling this. And during this time, Mercury is going to be squaring with Saturn 3 times. It's going to be opposing Jupiter in Gemini with 3 exact hits also. It's going to be trining Chiron in Aries with 3 hits. And it's going to coincide with Mars retrograde. So we're going to have a double dose of inner planet medicine for 10 days between December 6th and December 15th. And so I want to speak about each one of those and its importance. First, before I dive into the depths of that, I want to talk about the 6 things that I want you to tune into, tap into to do this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. Now, these 6 things are based off all of the planetary processes that are being pinged by Mercury. And I want you to see these 6 things at a very high level. We're going to do some Sagittarius journeying practice by having the bird's eye view before we tap into the details of everything. So, the number one thing I want you to do is to reroute your way. Just like that GPS that I was talking about earlier, sometimes you might want to reroute because you don't want to get to go on a path that has tolls, or maybe you want to stay off the highway, or maybe you just want to take the scenic route and drive by the shore. You get to choose. Where do you want to go? Why do you want to do anything that you want to do? What is your big why? What is your big vision? What is your big direction? And how do you want to get there? You get to choose. Okay. Second thing that I want you to do this Mercury retrograde is to recognize your silver linings. More than rethinking, more than reorganizing, which is your typical Mercury retrograde prescription, I want you to recognize, to recognize, like to put things back into cognition, is to see that all those missteps or mistakes, whatever you call them, or all of those places that you've been stuck, or all of those learning lessons, there are silver linings. What skills did you pick up? Similar, if my son loves to play Zelda and he goes on, Zelda's a video game, if you don't already know. And like there's like this vast world that Link, the main character, the character that you're playing, gets to explore. When you're playing the video game, you can go off and like, oh, I'm going to go explore that cave. I'm going to go explore that lake. There's no like necessarily a direct route, and there's no mistakes. And in every place that you go get to explore, there's a gift waiting for you. Maybe it's a coin, maybe it's an apple, maybe it's a special tool that you need in the future. These are your silver linings. What tools and gifts did you pick up from perceived mistakes, perceived detours, perceived like holdbacks, perceived challenges? What are your silver linings? Sagittarius is always looking at the bigger picture, and there's always a silver lining. Now, because of Saturn with this Sagittarius retrograde that we'll talk about in deeper, the third thing that I want you to do is to respond, react only to those and what is important to you. Not everyone requires a response or an action. And so to keep your boundaries, to keep your focus on your path, that journey, you are going to respond to what's important to you. Number 4, this is going to feel like a big pie in the sky thing, but I want you to rekindle your purpose because with Mercury retrograding through Sagittarius, excuse me, and rerouting your way, your journey, you are going to re-find your purpose. Maybe your purpose has shifted. Maybe you lost some steam or love in your purpose, but now you're going to rekindle that fire, that everlasting flame that's going to burn and fuel you to that next step. Number 5, I want you to re-inspire your ideas and your ideals. Now, I personally am not a person who's ever short of ideas. The ideas come and come and come and come, unless I'm not doing well. And over the last month, as I shared earlier, where I've been having really some mental health struggles, I noticed that that connection to the ideas that are always dropping in, it was stagnant. I was not getting any new ideas. But as soon as I started taking care of myself and resting and going on my walks again and not just prioritizing work, 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 I was starting to get reignited, re-inspiring ideas and getting more mental clarity. So maybe this is for you too. How can you gain more mental clarity so that you can re-inspire your ideas and ideals? The last thing that I would like you to do is to rewire your thinking. This is more than just rethinking and redoing things, but like rewiring the way that you go about. Maybe you have, like, I don't know if you can see in the back corner, if you're watching on the screen, but in the back corner, there's this like jumble of wires there. And I'm like, there has to be a simpler way. But before I can rewire it, I need to get a better central hub for all of these wires to reorganize them. And so for you, maybe rewiring things, maybe there's too many things going on that taking all of your mental energy. Maybe you need to streamline. Maybe you need to not streamline and explore different possibilities. But maybe this is just a way of you to not just think differently, but rewire the way that you go about doing things. And so even if you don't have that kind of download or answer just yet, I want to plant that seed into your heart so that during the next few weeks that Mercury is going retrograde, you're going to be able to work through all of these 6 tasks. So let's talk about now how the planets are going to support you during this Mercury retrograde. Of course, you know that the house that occupies that Sagittarius of 6 degrees to 22 degrees is that area of your life and your business where you need to reroute your journey. So for me, it's the 6th house. I really need to reroute the way that I take care of myself, both mentally, physically, emotionally. Where is that for you? If this is in your 1st house, you need to reroute the way that you take care, that you have self-awareness, how you think about yourself, how you identify and how you take lead. If this is in your 10th house, how you're delivering your business. So many different ways. I won't go through all of the different houses, but hopefully you have a good enough understanding about the houses and what they mean for your life and your business so that you can come to your own interpretation of where your purpose, where your journey needs to be rerouted for yourself by house. Okay. Now, you might have natal planets there. If you have natal planets in that area, those planetary processes will, of course, be impacted. And so tune into those natal planets, those processes of those planets, and start to hear what they're asking and how they're wanting to be reignited and rekindled towards your purpose. Okay, let's go into those planets. So earlier I mentioned that Mercury will be squaring off with Saturn 3 times. While it's direct in the shadow zone on 11/12, which is past, again on December 6th. And then when it's direct again, retracing the shadow zone on December 27th. So those 3 hits, we are going to be hearing Saturn in Pisces, that square with Mercury and Saturn in Pisces, asking us, when do I say or do less? Now, I know you've heard that no is a complete sentence, and this Saturn square is asking you to say no or nothing at all. Do nothing or do less. Change your mind if things no longer work for you. You don't have to keep on going. As long as your decision, your commitment, Saturn, your responsibility allows you to keep your eye on the path, on the greater path. Remember, I love that Hawaiian term, maka'ala, keep your eye on the path. This will keep distractions at bay, allowing you to spend your energy and resources where it matters most. When we talk about that Mars retrograde coming up, that spending your energy and resources, that theme is going to come back again. Okay. So if you've been feeling really depleted, like I have, that means that we have been wasting our energy on things that do not matter. Okay. Let's talk about this Jupiter now. So remember, Jupiter is in Gemini, and Mercury will be opposing Jupiter also for 3 times during the Mercury retrograde, the complete cycle. We have an opposition to Jupiter exact on November 17th, which is now past, on December 4th, and then December 26th. And so again, remember we were talking about that opposition of Mercury and Jupiter, that mutual reception, that house trade, where they're learning more about each other, they're supporting each other. Well, this support is asking you, with all honesty, without judgment, in full moon illumination between Jupiter and Mercury. Okay, hold on for this question. This is a big one. It's a little heavy, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. And I think this is the biggest question that you need to answer for yourself during this Mercury retrograde. The question is, why haven't I yet met my expectations or purpose? Let me repeat that. Why haven't I yet is the key word, met my expectations or purpose? Now, this is going to take complete transparency and honesty within yourself, because likely there hasn't been an external force keeping you from what you said you'd do. Sometimes there are, but likely there hasn't. And likely you've been making excuses to yourself that there's something else keeping you from your path. Maybe you're blaming, maybe you're in victimhood. Like, let's just be honest with yourself, no judgment. But if you're honest, you know that the thing that is keeping you from your path is you, your fears. Be compassionately honest with yourself and get to the root of why you haven't yet met or exceeded your own expectations without pointing the blame outside. Now, I have a caveat here, a little asterisk about making your expectations too high. If you have strong Virgo energy, I had a master class in Star Powered Circle right before this, and we had a ton of Virgo energy in the house. And all the Virgos in the house were like, I could feel their judgments about like they're not meeting their expectations. And I could sense that their expectations were just like the bar is too high. They couldn't even like reach the bar, and then wondering why they haven't met their expectations. So if this happens to be you, especially as we're preparing for the South Node to go into Virgo, this is going to be your chance to actually let go of those expectations that are just too unattainable. Okay. It is absolutely okay to pick the lowest hanging fruit. Growth happens when we are stretched at just the right amount. Not trying to overachieve, not trying to be like the ultimate number one, but yes, being your best. Okay. So if you have been setting these expectations that are just unattainable for you, yes, Virgos, I'm talking to you, then please lower the bar to normal expectations. And for all of us, really, let's start to really see what is holding back how we are holding ourselves back from meeting our own expectations, our own purpose. Okay, that's all we can ask. Because once we start to recognize it, then we can start to make quicker decisions about how to respond or react differently. Okay. When we come up to that Mars retrograde, there's going to be Neptune that's going to be helping you create devotion and ritual practices that will help you create the baby steps that allow you to reach your expectations and your purpose. Chiron. Chiron's been in the news a lot this year in 2024. Remember in February, we had the Chiron North Node conjunction, and then during eclipse season, we had the eclipse conjunct Chiron. So I've been talking a lot about Chiron in this earlier this year. If you want to go back and listen to some of those Chiron episodes, just search Chiron in my YouTube or search Chiron in my podcast player, and all those articles, those episodes should show up. But this Mercury retrograde is going to ping 3 times and trine. So trine a full support, full like just holding and acceptance. And this is just the gift. When Mercury trines Chiron those 3 times in Aries, it is asking you, what silver linings am I not seeing? What silver linings do I have that I must recognize? That's the what number was that? Number 2, recognize your silver linings. This comes from Chiron. Okay. Chiron, the wounded healer, leader, mentor, says your gifts lie in your past challenges, says that the things that you cannot heal in yourself, you can heal in others. This is your time to reinforce your strengths that you have gained from your most challenging experiences. Okay, you've done this already in February. You did it again in April. Now it is a trine. This is here for you. Are you recognizing it? Are you utilizing it? When we start to talk about Mars reinventing yourself with that Mars retrograde, we're going to hear Chiron coming in again. And Chiron is saying, when in reinventing yourself, like, hey, let's honor all of the challenges that we have gone through, but we don't have to identify as that victim because we are survivors. And I thank my client, Rhonda Scallon. We just had a 3-day VIP retreat here in San Francisco. She flew down to San Francisco and we spent 3 intense days like putting together her website and her brand messaging. It was so awesome. And she works with a lot of trauma, like leaders who have experienced trauma and how that trauma still holds them back. And we've been really digesting this idea of how our trauma doesn't define us. It doesn't like define our identity. However, it does give us our strengths and our gifts. And so I really want you to integrate your strengths that you have gained from your most challenging experiences. So beautiful. We thank Chiron in Aries and trining this Mercury in retrograde in Sagittarius. Okay, last thing, and it's a little preview into what's coming up with this Mars retrograde. Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde will be coinciding, 2 personal planets, both going retrograde for 10 days between, let me grab my calendar, between December 6th and December 15th. So for 10 days, our mindset and our body set, our physical vitality will be going through recalibration and working together. And so what mindset needs to be re-inspired to reinvent yourself? Okay. Again, we'll explore more of this when I talk about Mars retrograde. This will all tie in together. But both personal planets, Mercury and Mars, in medicine mode, you're going to feel it deeply for those 10 days. Mars retrograde asks you to re-energize who you are through reinventing your identity based on self-love and self-care. Leo and Cancer. And Mercury medicine is supporting this by shifting your mindset to connect the dots, Sagittarius, and see the greater picture. You have an eagle eye perspective during this time to make sense of where you want to go and who you want to become. I need this medicine personally. Maybe you do too. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. We are going into the American Thanksgiving holiday, and I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for spending your valuable time with me and talking about astrology, talking about how we can make change, and talking about the real things that can either make or break our greatness. And you are great. So I believe in you. I believe in everything that you are here to do to make and spark greater change in the world. All right. Until soon. Bye for now. Signing off, Leslie Tagorda. As a human design projector, my energy shines more brightly because of people like you who share my work. If you enjoy this podcast and want to help build a movement of innovative astrology and leadership and spark the intuitive revolution, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, or better yet, share this podcast with your change-making besties. We will all shine brighter together as we create the future we want to see.